The sky had always been a place of wonder, a canvas of endless possibilities. People looked up and dreamed, imagining the stars as destinations for future explorers. But one day, a star seemed to send a warning instead of inspiration. It began, quietly, almost imperceptibly. Deep in a remote observatory, scientists noticed something strange. The equipment they relied on every day, the massive antennas, the sensitive detectors, and the endless screens filled with numbers began showing patterns that didn't belong to Earth or anything known in the solar system. At first, it was easy to dismiss. Space was full of anomalies after all. Comets passed by, meteors glided silently, and satellites occasionally drifted off course. But this was different. The readings didn't match any natural phenomenon. They weren't random or chaotic. They followed a structure, a pattern that suggested intelligence and intent. The fleet moving across the solar system seemed organized, almost like a clockwork army, advancing in formations that no human technology had ever achieved. The lead scientist, whose life had been dedicated to studying the stars, leaned forward in disbelief. She had seen thousands of strange signals before, but nothing had ever made her heart beat so fast. The formation wasn't just near the edge of the solar system. It was heading straight toward Earth. The data showed speed, precision, and purpose. This wasn't an accidental visit. Something or someone was coming, and it was coming with intent. Word spread quickly within the scientific community. Alerts were sent to governments, space agencies, and international organizations. Some people dismissed it, calling it a false alarm or a misinterpretation of the data. Others, who had dedicated their lives to understanding the universe, felt a creeping sense of dread. They could not ignore the evidence. Every calculation, every observation, pointed to a singular truth. The Earth was being watched, and whatever was approaching was not friendly. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth, in a place humans could not even begin to imagine, a council of beings observed the same events. The Galactic Council, a collection of civilizations who had maintained balance in the galaxy for centuries, watched in stunned silence. Unlike humans, they had records stretching back thousands of years, memories of species rising and falling, planets thriving and dying. And in their archives, they found warnings that chilled even the oldest among them. The archives spoke of a species long thought extinct, a nomadic force that moved through galaxies, consuming everything in their path. They were merciless, intelligent, and extremely dangerous. And the signals arriving in the solar system matched the signature of this very species. For the Council, the realization was terrifying. They had thought these beings were gone forever. They had assumed the galaxy was safe again. But now here, they were, coming straight for one small, blue planet that the Council had never paid much attention to Earth. The Council debated what to do. Some argued that humans were not ready for contact and should be left to their fate. Others believed in giving them a chance, perhaps guiding them from afar. But the truth was clear. Humans had no idea what was coming. And even if they did, they had no means to defend themselves against such a fleet. The Council could only watch, their collective fear growing with each passing moment. Back on Earth, the sense of urgency was palpable. Governments convened emergency meetings. Scientists, military officials, and leaders gathered to discuss the unimaginable. How do you prepare for something no one has ever faced? How do you respond when the very sky above threatens your existence? People tried to go about their normal lives, but the tension was unavoidable. News outlets buzzed with speculation. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, and in quiet corners, ordinary people tried to process the idea that their world might be on the brink of something unprecedented. The lead scientist worked day and night, poring over data, running simulations, and calculating possible outcomes. She had never faced anything like this. Every theory about alien life she had ever considered now demanded urgent attention. She presented her findings to the world leaders, showing them the trajectories, the speed, and the sheer scale of what was approaching. There was no mistaking it. The fleet was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had ever encountered, and it was coming fast. For the first time, humanity felt both small and vulnerable in a way that no war, no disaster, and no natural catastrophe had ever caused. Cities, countries, and continents felt connected by fear. The threat was global, leaving no one untouched. And yet, amid the fear, there was also a flicker of determination. Humans were not known for surrendering easily. Despite the odds, they began to organize, to prepare, to think. Emergency protocols were drafted. Satellites and space stations were readied. Scientists shared information across borders, and the world began to function like a single organism, united by a threat that made political disagreements seem trivial. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council continued their silent observation. They had seen countless civilizations crumble under pressures they could not withstand. Some species had fought valiantly, but failed. Others had surrendered without resistance. But Earth was different. There was something unpredictable about. Humans are resilience, a spark of defiance, a capacity to adapt in ways that no one expected. For the first time in centuries, the Council watched a species that might, against all odds, surprise them. The approach of the fleet was not subtle. Night skies were no longer just a backdrop for stars. They became a reminder of what was coming. Satellites detected strange energy signatures. Long-range telescopes captured images of objects moving faster than anything Earth had launched into space. And still, humans continued to plan, to prepare, and to hope. The scientists knew that hope alone would not save humanity. Strategy, knowledge, and courage would be needed. She convened teams of experts from around the world, combining knowledge from every field: physics, engineering, biology, and even psychology. They worked tirelessly, understanding that this might be the only chance to respond before the fleet reached Earth's atmosphere. And yet, even as humans worked, the fleet continued its approach. It was methodical, almost calculating. Every movement seemed intentional. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty. The signal they emitted, whether intentional or not, was a message: we are coming, and we are not leaving. People began to experience the psychological effects of the impending threat. Anxiety spread, not just through news reports, but in the very fabric of daily life. Families gathered more closely. Communities began sharing resources. Leaders delivered speeches that aimed to calm, to reassure, and to prepare. And somewhere, in the mix of fear and hope, a sense of unity began to emerge. Humanity, which had been divided for so long, was now united in facing the unknown. For the scientist, every day was a race against time. She ran countless simulations, testing every possibility. Would the fleet attempt peaceful contact, or was it a war machine? Could Earth's defenses hold? Were humans capable of creating a technology that could even slightly deter such an advanced force? Every answer led to more questions, and every question demanded an immediate response. At night, she would step outside and look at the stars. They were no longer just points of light. They were the path of an approaching storm, a reminder of the fragility of life on this small blue planet. Yet, in that fragility, she also saw potential. Humans had survived countless challenges, from plagues to natural disasters. Perhaps somehow they could survive this as well. And so, humanity waited, worked, and hoped. The fleet moved closer each day, unrelenting and precise. The world's attention had shifted from mundane concerns to a singular focus: survival. Every mind was engaged, every resource mobilized. And while fear gripped the hearts of many, There was also an unspoken understanding that this was the moment that would define their species. The first part of this story ends not with a battle, but with anticipation. A world united by fear, hope, and determination, staring up at the sky, knowing that the events about to unfold would test humanity like never before. And somewhere beyond the stars, the Council continued to watch their centuries of experience, telling them that Earth was about to face something that could change everything. The Galactic Council sat in a chamber unlike anything a human could imagine. Towering walls made of shimmering materials that seemed to shift with the light surrounded them, and a vast, star-filled void stretched endlessly beyond transparent panels. Representatives from dozens of worlds moved with quiet urgency, their voices low but full of tension. Centuries of experience had prepared them to handle most crises, but this was something different. As the Council members examined the reports from across the galaxy, a heavy silence fell. The readings coming from the edge of the solar system were clear. The nomadic species thought to be extinct had returned. These were the beings that civilizations had feared for millennia, the ones that consumed entire planets, leaving nothing behind. They were precise, ruthless, and unstoppable, or at least that was what history said. Some members of the Council were frozen with fear. They had seen worlds crumble before their eyes, civilizations destroyed with almost casual efficiency. They remembered the warning records. Once these invaders set their sights on a planet, survival was extremely unlikely. The thought that this fleet was headed toward Earth, a small, fragile planet filled with species that had barely begun to explore their own solar system, made many of them uneasy. Others argued for calm. "We have the knowledge, we have the history." One elder said, "We cannot act out of fear alone. We must observe, we must understand. Perhaps the humans can surprise us." His words were met with mixed reactions. Some thought it foolish to hope that such an unprepared species could withstand a force that had destroyed countless others. But still, a few felt a spark of curiosity. Humans were different in ways that were not fully understood. They had survived against great odds before. Maybe, just maybe, they could do it again. The Council's historians quickly accessed ancient records. Holographic projections filled the chamber, showing maps of galaxies and markings of worlds that had fallen. Entire civilizations had vanished because of this species. The historians explained that these beings did not invade for diplomacy or negotiation. They consumed, they harvested, they moved on. And they were returning. The chamber grew tense as a younger member of the Council spoke. "We cannot simply watch. Earth has life that is vibrant, intelligent, and rare. We have no right to let it be destroyed while we remain idle." The elder, who had spoken before, nodded slightly. He understood the sentiment. The Council had strict rules about interference, but they had never encountered a threat like this. Every calculation, every observation suggested that Earth would be overwhelmed if left alone. Meanwhile, on Earth, humans were beginning to feel the pressure of the unknown. Cities buzzed with activity as emergency protocols were enacted. Air traffic was restricted, satellites were recalibrated, and underground command centers became hubs of frantic energy. People were anxious, but many were also determined. They did not fully understand what was approaching, but they knew they could not remain passive. Scientists worked tirelessly, coordinating with engineers and military strategists. Every data point from telescopes and radar was scrutinized, every possible defense scenario modeled. Humans had never faced a threat on this scale. Every calculation revealed how vulnerable their planet was, yet they refused to give in to despair. They worked because they had to, because survival demanded it. In the Council chamber, the debate grew heated. Some members argued that intervention was necessary immediately. They could send ships, share technology, or even directly confront. the fleet before it reached Earth. Others cautioned against it, warning that a premature confrontation could escalate the situation and cause more destruction. The question was not just whether Earth could survive, but whether interference could make things worse. One member spoke of unpredictability. Humans have a resilience that defies logic, they said. Their history shows an ability to adapt, to innovate, to fight even when the odds are against them. Perhaps they can develop solutions we cannot anticipate. We should not underestimate them. The room fell quiet. It was a perspective that many found difficult to accept. After all, humans were young in galactic terms. They were untested, barely, exploring their own solar system. And yet, here was the suggestion that they might survive a force that had destroyed much older, more advanced civilizations. On Earth, the public sensed something monumental was happening, even if most did not know the details. Rumors circulated. Social media buzzed with speculation, blending fear and hope. Scientists and leaders tried to provide accurate information, but the sheer scale of the unknown made it difficult. People reacted differently. Some panicked, some prepared in practical ways, and others simply watched the sky, hoping that their lives would not change forever. The lead scientist who had first detected the fleet continued to work tirelessly. She analyzed every piece of data, searching for weaknesses or patterns. Each day brought new readings from telescopes and satellites, showing the fleet moving steadily closer. She realized that this was not just a passing event, it was a confrontation that might define humanity's future. She also knew that humans had a history of overcoming great odds. Somehow, they would need to rely on their ingenuity and determination to survive. Back in the council chamber, a decision began to form. Some members believed that monitoring alone would not suffice. The fleet's advance was deliberate, precise, and growing faster than anticipated. The risks to Earth were too great. Intervention might be necessary, but it would have to be subtle. Direct interference could provoke the invaders, turning Earth into a battlefield far beyond anything that this species had ever seen. The challenge was to help humans survive without fully revealing themselves or triggering a catastrophe. The council's debate continued for hours, days even. They discussed every possible scenario, ranging from total annihilation to peaceful resolution, from technological assistance to tactical guidance. Each argument reflected the council's long history of observation and wisdom. They had overseen countless worlds, seen species rise and fall, and now faced a moment that required both courage and restraint. Humans, unaware of the council's deliberations, continued their work. They analyzed, experimented, and planned. Engineers modified satellites to act as early warning systems. Scientists created simulations to predict potential outcomes. Even ordinary citizens contributed, volunteering skills, resources, and support. A sense of unity began to emerge, a shared understanding that survival depended on cooperation and ingenuity. The fleet moved closer, and with each passing day, the tension grew. Strange signals appeared on communication channels, their nature undecipherable. Observatories captured glimpses of ships that defied human understanding, gigantic, geometrically perfect, moving in ways that seemed impossible. And yet, humans did not give in to despair. They continued to prepare, determined to protect their world. In the council chamber, some members finally argued for discreet intervention. Perhaps humans could be guided without direct contact. Perhaps a subtle push in the right direction could provide the advantage they needed to survive. Others worried that any interference could alert the invaders, making Earth a target sooner rather than later. The debate was tense, philosophical, and deeply human in its implications. On Earth, the lead scientist had an idea. She began exploring possibilities that seemed almost impossible, ways to use Earth's own technology to create signals that might confuse or slow the fleet. Every small discovery became a beacon of hope. Each calculation, no matter how minor, it seemed was a potential step toward survival. People began to rally around the idea that they were not entirely helpless. Even in the face of the unknown, they had a chance. The fleet's presence loomed larger with each passing day. Satellites detected their approach, radar tracked their progress, and telescopes captured their distant shapes. Humans stared at the sky in awe and fear, knowing that the creatures approaching were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Yet, there was also a quiet determination. Humans had faced uncertainty before. They had survived disasters, wars, and natural calamities. They had a way of finding solutions when none seemed possible. And so, while the Galactic Council continued their careful observation, humans worked. They prepared, adapted, and hoped. The Council debated, watched, and considered, but they could not fully intervene without risk. Earth was on its own, at least for now. The question remained, would the humans rise to the challenge? Could they survive a threat that had ended countless other civilizations? The story of Part 2 closes with anticipation and tension. Humans continued to prepare, unaware of the Council's concern and debates. The fleet moves steadily closer, and the possibilities for survival seem uncertain. But the spark of human resilience, ingenuity, and determination remains bright. The stage is set for the next chapter, where fear, courage, and intelligence will collide in ways that could change the course of history forever. The approaching fleet had become impossible to ignore. From the smallest villages to the largest cities, people looked up at the sky and saw unusual movements among the stars. Telescopes captured glimpses of enormous structures, strange shapes, that defied human understanding, moving with a precision that suggested intelligence far beyond humanity's capabilities. The tension was growing, not just in scientific circles, but among everyday people. As the world began to grasp that this was not a distant possibility, it was happening now. Leaders around the globe convened emergency councils, many for the first time in decades. Borders and politics were temporarily set aside. The discussions were tense, as world leaders, military commanders, and scientists worked to create a unified response. The questions were overwhelming. How do you protect a planet from a force that has no precedent? How do you prepare a population that has never faced anything like this before? And most importantly, how do you maintain hope in the face of what appeared to be an unstoppable advance? Scientists worked alongside military strategists, trying to imagine every scenario. Satellites were repurposed, observation stations ran around the clock, and supercomputers calculated the trajectories and capabilities of the approaching fleet. Every new data point confirmed one terrifying fact. This was a highly organized force. Their approach was not random. Their speed and precision indicated purpose, and their technology was unlike anything humanity had created. The lead scientist who had first detected the fleet spent sleepless nights analyzing the data. Her workrooms were cluttered with charts, screens, and printouts, each representing a tiny part of the larger puzzle. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Humans had little experience dealing with extraterrestrial intelligence, and now the future of the entire planet seemed to rest on their shoulders. Every calculation, every observation was crucial. One wrong assumption could cost millions of lives. People began to notice subtle changes in the skies. Satellites picked up strange energy readings, and unusual signals appeared on communication channels. These signals were not random. They seemed to be scanning, mapping, gathering information. The implications were chilling. The fleet was not here for diplomacy or exploration. Their actions suggested preparation, and humans realized that they were being studied, evaluated, and perhaps judged. Despite the fear, humanity refused to surrender to panic. Communities came together, in ways they had never done before. Scientists shared data openly across borders. Engineers collaborated on projects that once would have been classified. Ordinary citizens volunteered in research, logistics, and support roles. There was a collective understanding that survival depended on cooperation, creativity, and determination. Humans, fragile though they might appear, were beginning to rise to the challenge. The military focused on developing defensive strategies, even though they were painfully aware of their limitations. The fleet's size and technology were overwhelming. Traditional weapons and defenses were nearly useless against objects that could move at incredible speeds and emit energy fields, unlike anything Earth had ever encountered. Commanders worked with scientists to create improvised solutions, trying to turn existing technology into something that could at least slow the fleet or gather intelligence about its weaknesses. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council continued their silent observation from afar. They had seen countless species struggle against similar threats, and history often ended in devastation. Yet there was something unpredictable about humans. Their resilience, adaptability, and determination to survive were traits that even advanced civilizations sometimes underestimated. The Council began to quietly debate whether to intervene, whether to offer guidance, or whether Earth should be left to fend for itself. Each choice carried enormous consequences, not just for humans, but for the galaxy at large. On Earth, the public reacted in varied ways. Some panicked, evacuating cities or preparing for the worst. Others refused to be paralyzed by fear, seeking ways to contribute or simply continuing their daily lives while staying informed. The media struggled to balance urgency with caution, reporting the facts without inciting mass hysteria. Schools, workplaces, and public services adjusted to the new reality, understanding that humanity was entering a period of unprecedented challenge. The lead scientist gathered a team of experts from multiple countries. They worked tirelessly to analyze the fleet's movements, looking for patterns, vulnerabilities, and opportunities. Days and nights blurred together as they tested theories, ran simulations, and debated strategies. The room was tense, filled with the constant hum of computers and the quiet murmur of focused discussion. Every small discovery felt like a step toward survival. Every mistake carried weighty consequences. One day, a breakthrough occurred. Using advanced algorithms, the team detected a small repeating pattern in the fleet's signals. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it suggested that the fleet relied on a communication method that could be disrupted. The discovery did not guarantee victory, but it offered a glimmer of hope. For the first time, the team believed that humans might have a chance to slow down or interfere with the fleet's operations. World leaders, now fully aware of the scale of the threat, began mobilizing resources like never before. Space programs received emergency funding. Research facilities worked around the clock to create defensive technologies. The military adapted quickly, training personnel and deploying resources strategically. Humanity's response was imperfect but determined, driven by a sense of urgency and the knowledge that inaction was not an option. While all this was happening, ordinary people continued to play a vital role. Engineers repaired and adapted infrastructure. Teachers and community leaders organized information and support for citizens. Volunteers helped in research labs, hospitals, and logistical networks. Humans were discovering a hidden strength. In times of crisis, they could come together, pooling skills, knowledge, and courage to face challenges far beyond what they had. Imagine as the fleet moved closer, its scale became more apparent. Telescopes captured enormous ships, their surfaces reflecting light in strange ways, their movements almost imperceptible from a distance. Radar and sensors indicated immense energy fields, creating a sense of awe and fear simultaneously. Humans had never faced anything like this. The planet's defenses were primitive in comparison, and yet they were resourceful, adapting quickly to the information and tools available. The lead scientist continued to coordinate the global effort. She realized the humans could not rely on fear or panic. They had to rely on ingenuity, collaboration, and determination. Every small improvement, every successful simulation, was a step closer to understanding the fleet and preparing for its arrival. She reminded her team that humans had survived countless disasters, often against impossible odds. Perhaps, this was another challenge they could meet. The Galactic Council observed these developments with growing curiosity. Humans were untested in interstellar conflict, yet their determination, ingenuity, and capacity for cooperation were striking. Some members of the Council argued for subtle guidance, sharing insights that could help humans survive without fully revealing themselves. Others worried that intervention could provoke the fleet, making Earth a target sooner rather than later. The debate reflected centuries of experience and the uncertainty of encountering a species capable of unexpected resilience. Back on Earth, the public's awareness grew. The fleet's approach was no longer a distant possibility. It was imminent. People watched the skies, not with wonder, but with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and determination. Schools and universities contributed to research. Communities organized. Survival strategies and ordinary citizens continued to adapt in creative ways. Humanity, despite its vulnerabilities, showed a remarkable capacity to unite under pressure. The fleet's signals continued to arrive, complex and deliberate. Scientists worked to interpret them, searching for patterns that might reveal intentions or weaknesses. Every day brought new discoveries, some hopeful, some frightening. Humans realized that understanding the fleet would be just as important as preparing defenses. Knowledge became a weapon, and collaboration was the key to survival. As the story of Part 3 progresses, humans are shown not as helpless victims, but as active participants, responding to a threat far beyond their previous experience. They adapt, innovate, and collaborate. The Galactic Council watches, weighing the unpredictability of human resilience against the known capabilities of the approaching fleet. The tension grows as the fleet moves closer, and every action, every decision, carries enormous weight. The closing of Part 3 leaves humanity at a turning point. Fear, determination, and ingenuity combine to shape their response. The stage is set for confrontation, for discovery, and for the revelation of what humans are truly capable of when faced with an unimaginable threat. The fleet continues its approach. The world prepares, and the Galactic Council continues to observe, knowing that the coming days will define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The first signs of the fleet's arrival were subtle but unmistakable. From the surface of Earth, people noticed faint glimmers in the night sky movements that didn't belong to any known celestial body. Satellites picked up enormous energy. Readings and deep space observatories confirmed what humanity had feared. The fleet had reached the outskirts of the solar system. Moving with precision and intent toward the blue planet below. The world felt a collective shift. News networks, which had once treated reports with skepticism or as distant curiosities, now broadcast continuous updates. Governments confirmed the presence of the fleet, and citizens realized that this was no longer a distant possibility. It was imminent. Panic, fear, and determination mingled in equal measure. For many, the stars no longer represented dreams or exploration. They represented an unknown threat, coming closer every hour. The lead scientist and her team were at the center of global preparations. They monitored every signal, every anomaly, every movement with obsessive focus. Their workrooms were alive with the constant hum of computers, the glow of screens displaying trajectories, energy readings, and simulations. Worked tirelessly, knowing that the decisions made now could determine the survival of millions. Each new piece of data was examined from every angle, seeking weaknesses or patterns that could give humanity an edge. As the fleet moved closer, Earth's military forces shifted into high alert. Fighter jets, space stations, and defense satellites were deployed strategically. For the first time, countries shared information and resources openly, understanding that survival required cooperation. Scientists advised the military, offering insights on energy fields, movement patterns, and potential vulnerabilities. Engineers improvised solutions, adapting technology in ways that had never been attempted before. Humanity, small and unprepared though it was, began to respond with creativity, determination, and urgency. Then, the first contact, or what could be called a contact, occurred. Massive drones, smaller than the main ships, but still immense by human standards, entered Earth's atmosphere. They moved with precision, scanning, mapping, and collecting data. Cities reported strange energy readings, unusual electromagnetic interference, and minor disruptions in communications. It was clear that these were not exploratory probes. They were instruments of preparation, sent to understand, evaluate, and perhaps weaken resistance. Despite the fear, humans refused to panic completely. Emergency protocols activated, and communities adapted to the situation. Power grids were protected, communications networks rerouted, and public spaces organized for emergency coordination. Scientists used the fleet's behavior to learn more about its technology, identifying patterns in the drone scans and noting their operational rhythms. Even small victories, such as predicting the path of a drone or decoding a repeated signal, were celebrated as proof that humanity could, in some way, understand the threat. Meanwhile, ordinary people demonstrated courage in countless ways. Volunteers helped monitor local skies, relaying information to regional command centers. Engineers, students, and hobbyists contributed ideas to improve detection systems. Communities shared resources, prepared for emergencies, and adapted routines to minimize risk. Humanity's response was imperfect, chaotic at times, yet it displayed resilience, creativity, and determination. Fear was present, but it did not paralyze them entirely. The lead scientist discovered something unexpected during one of her analyses. The drones, while powerful and advanced, relied on a communication network that had a vulnerability. A momentary disruption in their synchronization could cause temporary confusion in their operations. It was a small weakness, but in desperate times, even a small advantage could be critical. She presented her findings to military leaders and engineers, explaining how improvised pulses and interference could slow or confuse the drones long enough to gather intelligence and prepare defenses. World leaders acted swiftly. Resources were mobilized to implement the scientists' plan. Satellites were reprogrammed, electronic devices modified, and ground-based generators positioned strategically. For the first time, humanity felt that they had a tangible method to resist the fleet's initial advance. It was not a victory, but it was a start. The realization sparked hope, reminding people that even in the face of a superior force, ingenuity and determination could create possibilities. The drone's movements continued to escalate. Large cities experienced temporary communication blackouts, unusual power surges, and strange atmospheric disturbances. The public watched with fear and fascination, witnessing the reality of the invasion. Emergency broadcasts reassured citizens, offering guidance on safety and encouraged cooperation. Humanity's response, though imperfect, grew more efficient with every passing day. From the skies, the main fleet remained distant but imposing. Satellites captured images of enormous ships, their surfaces reflecting sunlight in strange ways, moving with precision and seeming intelligence. Analysts studied their formation patterns, trying to anticipate their next actions. Even the most advanced human technology could not match the fleet's capabilities, but understanding their behavior provided a crucial advantage in planning. Defense strategies. As the first wave of drones operated, the Galactic Council observed with growing concern. They had seen countless species face similar invasions, and history often ended with total destruction. Yet humans were different. They had a resilience and ingenuity that even the Council had not fully expected. Their response imperfect, but persistent, suggested that this species might survive challenges that others had failed to overcome. Some Council members began discussing discreet guidance, ways to subtly aid humans without revealing their presence or provoking the fleet. On Earth, the military coordinated with scientists to launch interference operations. Ground-based devices emitted carefully timed pulses, disrupting the drone's communication for brief periods. The effect was immediate. Some drones paused, their scanning patterns disrupted. Others adjusted, showing adaptability, but also vulnerability. Humans observed, learned, and adapted in real time, realizing that their combined ingenuity could create temporary advantages against an overwhelmingly superior force. Public morale fluctuated, swinging between fear and hope. People witnessed the drones' disruptions, understanding that humanity was not entirely helpless. Emergency teams, engineers, and scientists worked together to monitor the skies and implement new strategies. The combination of observation, quick thinking, and cooperation became humanity's first real defense. Every small success bolstered confidence and reinforced the understanding that survival would depend on intelligence, unity, and courage. The lead scientist and her team remained at the heart of these efforts. Sleepless and relentless, they continued, analyzing every new signal, every movement, and every anomaly. They adjusted strategies in real time, shared findings with military leaders, and coordinated with engineers to improve interference techniques. Their work became a symbol of human resilience, the idea that intelligence, persistence, and creativity could stand against overwhelming odds. As the fleet continued its approach, humans realized that the situation was evolving rapidly. The drones were just the beginning, the first visible sign of the fleet's operations. Larger ships loomed farther away, and the full scale of the invasion remained unknown. Humanity had gained small advantages, but the challenge ahead would be far greater. Every decision, every action, and every observation would matter. The story of Part 4 focuses on humanity's first real encounter with the fleet, the drones entering the atmosphere, the initial disruptions, and the first moments of coordinated resistance. It shows humans as active participants, learning, adapting, and using intelligence and creativity to respond to a superior force. The tension is high, but hope remains, highlighting human determination and ingenuity in the face of unprecedented danger. By the end of this part, humans had demonstrated that they were capable of understanding and reacting to a threat far beyond their previous experience. The drone's temporary disruption offered hope, and the lessons learned would shape future strategies. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council continued to watch, fascinated and concerned by humanity's response. The stage was set for the next phase, where larger confrontations and deeper challenges would test human courage, intelligence, and resilience even further. After the first drones entered Earth's atmosphere, humanity felt a fragile sense of hope. The initial disruption operations had worked better than anyone had expected. The drones had paused, faltered, and even changed their scanning patterns. It was proof that even against a fleet of unimaginable power, humans could adapt and fight back in their own way. The sense of achievement, however small, spread across military command centers, laboratories, and communities around the world. People realized that survival was possible if they worked together. The lead scientist and her team had become the centerpiece of humanity's coordinated response. They worked in constant motion, analyzing the fleet's every maneuver. Their algorithms processed terabytes of data every second, simulating possible outcomes and testing interference strategies. Every day brought new challenges, but also new discoveries. They realized that the fleet's technology, though superior, had predictable patterns. It reacted to environmental conditions, energy pulses, and interference in ways that could be anticipated. It was during one of these late-night sessions that a breakthrough occurred. A junior researcher, carefully examining the drone's signals, noticed something extraordinary. The fleet relied on a network of communication that extended beyond individual drones. Disrupt the network at the right moment, and the drones would temporarily lose coordination. The idea was risky, but it offered a chance to slow them down and gather critical intelligence about the fleet. The lead scientist immediately called for a test, and after careful planning, the first controlled interference was carried out. The results were encouraging. Several drones paused mid-scan, while others adjusted their routes erratically. For the first time, humans could influence the invaders' actions, however, briefly. News of this success spread quickly, giving hope to a fearful population. Communities shared the news, schools discussed the science behind it, and engineers continued to improve the interference systems. Humanity was no longer entirely reactive. They were starting to take initiative. Meanwhile, Earth's military forces reorganized. Strategic defense plans were updated to account for the new interference possibilities. Satellites, once passive observers, became active participants, transmitting targeted pulses to disrupt the drone's communication network. Ground-based systems supported the efforts, using electromagnetic emissions to confuse the fleets. Sensors. It was an improvised strategy, relying on ingenuity and quick thinking rather than brute force, but it worked. Humans were finding ways to turn the situation in their favor, but the lead scientist knew that small victories were just the beginning. The drones were only a fraction of the fleet, and the main ships remained far larger and far more dangerous. They would likely adapt to these interference methods, learning from each encounter. Humanity's survival would depend not only on technology, but on thinking faster than the fleet, anticipating their movements, and remaining flexible in strategy. The team worked tirelessly, analyzing patterns and preparing for the next phase. It was around this time that a new, unexpected development occurred. A faction within the Galactic Council, observing humans for the first time, began to argue for discreet assistance. They had seen countless civilizations crushed by the same nomadic species, yet humans were proving resilient, adaptable, and inventive. One council member suggested providing subtle guidance technology hints, strategic insights, or even indirect interventions without alerting the fleet. Others resisted, arguing that interference could provoke disaster, but a plan began to take shape. The lead scientist noticed subtle anomalies in some of the data streams, strange patterns that seemed almost like guidance. At first, she assumed they were errors, but careful analysis revealed they contained useful information energy. Frequencies, minor adjustments in interference timing, and insights into the drone's behavior. These hints, whether intentional or not, helped the human team improve their systems and anticipate fleet actions more effectively. Humanity was learning faster than expected, and each new advantage strengthened morale. Communities and ordinary people played a crucial role. Volunteers monitored local skies, relaying reports of unusual activity to central command centers. Engineers and hobbyists contributed ideas for improving interference devices. Schools and universities shared knowledge, helping students understand the science behind the fleet's technology and inspiring new approaches. Even small contributions, testing an improvised antenna, suggesting a modification to a pulse generator, could make a difference. Humanity was beginning to fight, not just with weapons, but with intelligence, creativity, and Unity. As the fleet adjusted its operations, the lead scientist realized that humans needed to create a coordinated strategy that could operate globally. Satellite arrays, ground-based generators, and communication networks were synchronized to maximize the disruption of the fleet's systems. The plan was risky, requiring precise timing and global cooperation, but it was humanity's best chance. To maintain the initiative, every person, from scientists to volunteers, became part of a vast network aimed at slowing the invaders and buying time for further preparation. The first large-scale coordinated interference operation was carried out at dawn when the drones began another sweeping scan of the planet. Pulses emitted from satellites, combined with synchronized ground systems, temporarily disrupted the fleet's network. Drones paused, communication signals fluctuated, and some ships adjusted their positions unpredictably. For a brief moment, humanity had forced the invaders to react, turning fear into opportunity. Public morale surged. Citizens, watching from safe locations or following news reports, realized that the fleet could be challenged. Hope spread, not as naive optimism, but as a recognition of humanity's capacity to learn, adapt, and fight intelligently. Communities celebrated small victories while preparing for the inevitable next encounter. People understood that the challenge was far from over, but the first real evidence of agency, the ability to influence the invaders, was profoundly motivating. Fleet, sensing the interference, began subtle adaptations. Drones altered their scanning patterns, showing resilience and intelligence. The main ships, however, remained distant and largely inactive. This gave humans time to continue analyzing the technology and adjusting strategies. The lead scientist emphasized that every operation, no matter how small, provided critical information about the fleet's capabilities, weaknesses, and likely responses. Humans were learning to think not only reactively, but strategically, shaping their approach based on observation and understanding rather than fear alone. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council observed with growing interest. Humans were proving unpredictable. Their resilience, adaptability, and cooperation went beyond what many council members expected. Some argued for discreet assistance, continuing to provide subtle guidance and indirect support, while others insisted that humanity must face the challenge alone. The debate reflected centuries of experience and the uncertainty inherent in dealing with a species capable of unexpected ingenuity. On Earth, as the fleet adapted, humans also evolved their strategies. Scientists refined algorithms to anticipate the drones' responses to interference. Engineers modified devices to increase precision and efficiency. Volunteers and citizens continued to play active roles, monitoring skies, reporting anomalies, and maintaining communication networks. Every success, however small, strengthened morale and reinforced the understanding that survival depended on intelligence, collaboration, and courage. The story of Part 5 highlights humanity's first real moments of strategic initiative. Small victories against the drones, coordinated global operations, and subtle guidance from the Galactic Council all combine to show that humans are capable of learning, adapting, and challenging a vastly superior force. The narrative emphasizes ingenuity, resilience, and cooperation, portraying humans as active participants rather than passive victims. As the part concludes, humanity has gained a foothold. The fleet's drones have been disrupted, communication networks temporarily confused, and strategic understanding improved. Yet the challenge is far from over. Larger ships loom on the horizon, and the main threat remains. Humans have discovered their own potential, but the future remains uncertain. Determination, intelligence, and courage will be tested in the next phase, as the fleet continues its advance and humanity prepares for what could be its most critical confrontation. The fleet had advanced steadily, and now the largest ships were within the outer reaches of Earth's atmosphere. Their presence was massive and overwhelming, filling the skies with shapes and energy patterns that humans had never seen before. The drones were still operating, mapping the planet and testing defenses, but the scale of the fleet's arrival was undeniable. Every person on Earth felt it, an instinctive, silent recognition that history was being written above their heads. Despite the fear, humans had learned from the first encounters. Coordinated interference operations had proven effective, even if only temporarily. The combination of intelligence, creativity, and global cooperation had slowed the drones and given humanity precious time to prepare for what was coming next. Earth's leaders, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens understood that this was more than just a technological challenge. It was a test of endurance, ingenuity, and courage. The lead scientist, now recognized as a central figure in humanity's response, worked tirelessly. Her team analyzed every movement of the fleet, every signal emitted by the drones, and every pattern the ships displayed. Their goal was not only survival, but also understanding. If humans could decode the fleet's behavior, they might anticipate its next moves, and perhaps even influence its actions. The work was exhausting and relentless, but failure was not an option. Every calculation could mean the difference between life and death for millions. Communities around the world had adapted to the new reality. Emergency protocols were in place, and people had learned to cooperate efficiently under stress. Volunteers monitored the skies, shared information, and maintained communication networks. Engineers and technicians improvised solutions on the fly, while scientists ran simulations to test possible defensive strategies. Humanity was no longer reactive alone, they were proactive, using observation, analysis, and ingenuity to shape their response. For the first time, the larger ships of the fleet began visible maneuvers in low orbit. Massive energy shields glowed faintly, signaling power levels far beyond anything Earth had created. The drones continued their work below, scanning cities, forests, oceans, and even individual infrastructure systems. It was a tense and dangerous moment. Any miscalculation could lead to destruction, yet humanity faced it with determination. The combination of fear and courage created a unique atmosphere, one where innovation flourished under pressure. Galactic Council observed the unfolding events with intense interest. They had watched countless civilizations fall to the same nomadic fleet, yet humans had demonstrated resilience, creativity, and intelligence that few had expected. Some council members advocated for intervention to prevent humanity from being destroyed, while others insisted that humans needed to face this challenge independently. The debates reflected centuries of experience and the uncertainty inherent in predicting the actions of a species capable of ingenuity and adaptability. On Earth, humans were developing more advanced strategies. By analyzing drone behavior and fleet movement, they could predict when and where the next wave of scans would occur. Engineers and scientists collaborated to enhance interference systems, making them more precise and effective. Satellites and ground-based devices emitted synchronized pulses, temporarily confusing drones and forcing adjustments in their scanning patterns. It was not a perfect defense, but it worked, giving humanity a measure of control in an otherwise overwhelming situation. The public became increasingly aware of both the danger and the small victories. News reports highlighted successful interference operations, giving citizens hope and reinforcing the idea that humanity was not helpless. Communities organized, sharing resources and knowledge. Volunteers contributed to monitoring systems, maintaining communication networks, and even repairing devices. People understood that every contribution mattered. Survival was no longer the responsibility of scientists and military leaders alone. It was a collective effort, with every individual playing a role. as the fleet adjusted to human interference. It became clear that the invaders were intelligent and adaptable. Drones changed scanning patterns, energy shields adjusted, and signals became more complex. Humans had to respond faster, think smarter, and coordinate more efficiently. Every operation became a lesson, every failure a prompt to adapt. The planet itself seemed to unite in resilience, with humanity using observation and creativity to turn fear into action. The lead scientist noticed subtle anomalies in the fleet's signals repeating, sequences that could be exploited. By timing interference pulses precisely, the team could temporarily disrupt the drone's coordination, creating small but significant advantages. These operations were risky and required perfect execution, but the team understood that even brief opportunities could be leveraged to gain critical insights and prepare for the fleet's next moves. As the fleet moved closer to critical infrastructure and populated areas, Earth's defensive network reached its peak coordination. Satellites, communication arrays, and ground-based systems acted in unison, creating a global network designed to confuse and delay the drones. Engineers, scientists, and volunteers operated as a single organism, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. The drones paused, faltered, and recalibrated, buying humanity precious time. Humanity's ability to adapt did not go unnoticed by the fleet. Signals indicated a response to the interference, suggesting that the invaders were learning from each encounter. This only made humans more determined. They understood that survival required constant observation, rapid adaptation, and continuous innovation. Each engagement became a test of intelligence, strategy, and endurance, a battle not just of strength, but of cleverness and perseverance. Meanwhile, subtle guidance from the Galactic Council continued, though it remained indirect. Certain energy patterns and signal adjustments hinted at weaknesses or suggested strategies without revealing themselves. The human team noticed these anomalies, studied them carefully, and integrated them into interference operations. Each subtle hint became a lifeline, a way to gain incremental advantages without provoking the fleet unnecessarily. As the first major wave of the fleet approached, humans felt the weight of the moment. Cities were on high alert. Communication systems buzzed with activity. Families and communities had prepared as best they could, understanding that survival depended on cooperation, knowledge, and courage. The planet itself seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the stakes. The lead scientist oversaw the synchronized interference operation. Satellites, generators, and ground devices pulsed in harmony, targeting drone communication networks. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Drones faltered, scans paused, and the fleet adjusted positions in unexpected ways. Humanity had forced the invaders to respond, proving that even a technologically inferior species could influence events through intelligence and coordination. Public morale soared. People realized that they were not powerless. They had faced fear and uncertainty, adapted quickly, and achieved something extraordinary. Communities celebrated small victories while remaining vigilant, understanding that the larger challenge had only just begun. Humanity had learned that survival was possible through resilience, cooperation, and ingenuity. The fleet, recognizing the resistance, began subtle adaptations. Drones adjusted scanning patterns, energy fields shifted, and some larger ships tested new positions in orbit. The humans' efforts were effective, but only temporary. The fight was far from over. Yet the planet had demonstrated a remarkable capacity to respond, adapt, and resist. Humanity had turned fear into determination, chaos into strategy, and uncertainty into opportunity. The Galactic Council observed with awe and concern. Humans had faced a threat that had destroyed countless civilizations, and had done so with ingenuity, cooperation, and courage. The outcome remained uncertain, but the resilience and adaptability of humans had caught the Council's attention. Some members continued to argue for intervention, while others insisted that humans should continue independently. Either way, the lessons were clear. Earth's inhabitants were capable of far more than anyone had anticipated. As Part 6 reaches its conclusion, humanity remains in a delicate balance. The fleet looms, immense and powerful, yet humans have proven that they can learn, adapt, and influence events. Each engagement, each interference operation, each contribution from ordinary people strengthens their position. Survival depends on observation, creativity, and courage. Fear remains, but so does hope. Humanity has discovered its own potential. The story closes with the world united and resilient, prepared for the next challenges, and aware that the coming days will define the course of history. The fleet remains a threat, yet humanity has proven that even against overwhelming odds, intelligence, determination, and cooperation can create possibilities. The Galactic Council watches, both impressed and concerned, knowing that Earth's inhabitants may yet surprise the galaxy. The sky remains a place of wonder and danger, a reminder of the unknown and the resilience of life. Humanity stands ready, not as helpless observers, but as active participants in a battle that is as much about courage, ingenuity, and unity as it is about survival.